This is Laurel Lake Cemeteries Final Resting Place Part 2. In Part 1, I discussed the 9 cemeteries and 320 graves that were moved in 1973 during the construction of Laurel Lake. All the information in both videos comes from the Corps of Engineers' final report of cemetery relocations, which was published in May of 1974. In this video presentation, I will discuss the primary relocation cemetery, Rest Haven in Corbin, Kentucky. This is Rest Haven, located on Park Hill Road in Corbin. Rest Haven contains a little over 2,700 graves. I can only speculate why Rest Haven was chosen as the reinterment site by the Corps of Engineers, but it probably had something to do with price. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers purchased 288 spaces or grave plots here at Rest Haven for a total cost of $4,896. That's near $30,000 today, which is still a pretty good bargain. Out of the 320 relocated graves, 288 came here to Rest Haven, and 32 went to other locations. Of the 288 that came here to Rest Haven, 3 of them went into private plots. 15 of them had their own gravestones, and the Corps provided 270 markers to replace the old field stones. The Corps designed the markers using a combination of aluminum funeral home plates and poured concrete blocks. Here's how they were designed. These are the concrete grave marker designs that were used. You can see that these are 16 wide by 10 tall by 8 inches across. They spec'd a square or hex head rust-proof bolt and a hex head acorn nut. And this is a side view. And of course, from the top view, the identification plate would have been here with the 2 hex screws holding the aluminum plate in place. 270 of these were purchased for Rest Haven. Rest Haven would have been a very busy place in 1973. The relocations took place in late July, all of August, and most of September of 1973. Meanwhile, back at the Laurel Lake Cemeteries, the contractor had 288 boxes that had been built, along with identification labels for those boxes. These are the reinterment boxes that were designed and built. They had a minimum box and a maximum box. You can see the dimensions of the minimum box are 3 feet by 1.5 feet by 1 foot tall. And the ID plate was placed on top of each box. The minimum box would have been used when minimal remains were recovered, maybe just, in some cases, dark dirt and maybe clothing items. The maximum box, once again, the ID plate was placed on every box, and the maximum box would have been used for complete skeletal remains that were recovered. The specs on this were tongue and groove or 3/4 inch plywood, and of course the marker was placed on each box as well. The first time that I came to Rest Haven, I walked around for over an hour trying to find the reinterment site. Rest Haven has changed a whole lot since 1973, and I knew that the reinterment graves would all be in the same location. I used a Corps schematic drawing to zone in on where it should be. In 1973, there was a road. There's the culvert tile to the old road that went straight out in that direction, which led to the reinterment site location. You can still kind of make out the old roadbed loop that led back to the reinterment site. Goes right up through there and looped right back to there. This is the old Rest Haven Cemetery loop and layout as it appeared in 1973, and as you can see, this road here no longer exists. Here are the three reference stones of Mullins, Byerly, and Crabtree. Now this road, there is still a road right here. And then back in here shows the plot layout, section A. Here's the section B, on down to section C. Crabtree, Byerly, and Mullins, all with their concrete borders, which are still here today, is how I found the reinterment site. The old road loop has changed, and today everything has changed except for the three referenced concrete graves. Using the three referenced graves and their concrete boundaries, I realized that back here in the back is the reinterment site. And after strolling through here, it didn't take long to realize that the grave sites have been neglected. There should be 270 markers and 15 tombstones. You can see a few old tombstones scattered throughout here. And then when you start looking, there should be markers all in rows. They should all be together. They should be. This is the layout of the grave markers, the reinterments at Rest Haven. The first section, section A, mostly cemetery number 1 in most of section A, that's Pointer. And then the first number, of course, is the cemetery, and the second number is the grave. Most of these were unknowns. Occasionally you will see blank spots where this is areas where the individual had a stone. This is section B, and on back to section C. 288 people came to Rest Haven, but 3 were buried in private plots. So there's 285 individuals in the reinterment location. But the markers after 46 years have been neglected. Most of them, almost all of them, have disappeared. Very few of them can even be seen. I spotted a few of the relocated tombstones and realized that I was in the area. It probably extends down that direction over 200 feet. A few of the old markers are still here. And in some instances, relatives who knew that their deceased were here came out and replaced the old design markers with some more modern markers. That's happened in a few instances. But the majority of the markers are grown over and disappeared. Here's an example of one who actually has a name, Vernon Holt. He came from Cemetery 1, which would be Pointer. He was grave number 77 at Pointer. But there should be others. You see some indentations in the ground, but the markers are just not visible at all. They should be lined up all the way across through here. I am in what the Corps of Engineers called Section A, and there's a Section A marker that is visible. Back in this corner, there should be markers just lined up where they started. Back in this corner, they should be lined up everywhere, all the way back over 200 and some feet in that direction. You can see a lot of indentations for graves, but you just don't see the markers. And then occasionally you will spot one that I kind of dug out a little bit. Grave 33 from Pointer, an unknown. And another one, you can't see the concrete marker at all. And then an old grave, one of the 15 that had their own stone. Seventh Kentucky Infantry, Samuel Steele. And in some places, the graveyard is just a dumping dirt from other graves here. Section B, that back that way is Section A. So Section B markers just looks like it's been knocked out of the ground, just reset some random place. There are a number of places where the graveyard's just throwing in dirt, maybe to fill in depressions, but while they're filling in dirt, they're also further covering the grave markers. In some places, the Corps of Engineers designed blocks have been unearthed. Here's two of them that have just been unearthed and just laid here beside the stone. James Franklin, the son of Jesse and Rebecca Morgan, died in 1938, so he was the one that had his own stone. And here are two of the, see the wording is gone off of the plate. Here you can see the Corps designed hex head bolt. On this one you can see there's the old bolt down into the concrete that's been broken off, and the hex head nut here. So there are about 3 of these that have been dug up out of the ground. And over here is another. That was a pole that was placed. In fact, I think the schematic said that there were 8 of these poles that were set at one time. There's only one that's still visible. And here are some more of the 15 individuals who had their own stones. L.A. Literal. It's another Literal. And Solomon Literal. So there are seemingly about 15 old stones that are here. But most of the, as you can see walking around, there just should be markers everywhere. There is one that's, you can still see. Another one you can barely see. Almost covered up. They've done a lot of sinking down in the ground. Here's a marker that's visible, but the stone's not. They literally should be everywhere. In part 3 of Laurel Lake Cemetery's final resting place, we will look more detailed into the neglect and oversight of the reinterment markers here at Rest Haven. Thank you for the privilege of your time.